Hello and welcome. I'm Rob Markopoulos, Executive Producer of EdTV. You know, in today's society, we all want to be well informed, but as too much information taking a toll on our well-being, we are constantly exposed to news everywhere. TV, radio, online through social media, and not only us, but our children as well. There are even studies proving that exposure to bad news, which seems to be all we hear lately, can cause anxiety, mood disorders, and can even be addictive. On the other hand, good news has been proven to increase our good mood hormones and even strengthen our faith in humanity. So why isn't there more good news out there? Well, we here at EdTV have just the solution. Red Clay is not just full of good news, but great news. Our students, teachers, and administration are not just remarkable individuals. They're also doing amazing, inspiring things each and every day. So each month, we'll do our best to bring you a sampling of just that. So without further ado, welcome to the good stuff.
In and around Red Clay, there are so many places of interest for students and our families. One of the places is the Brandywine Zoo. The Brandywine Zoo is located in beautiful Brandywine Park in Wilmington. Now you may be saying, yes, Eliza, we know that. But did you know they have a traveling zoo? I know, right? It provides classes for school kids like me with opportunities that are fun and educational. Recently, they visited my school, North Star Elementary, to teach and have fun with the kindergarten students. Let's take a look.
My name is Kenny Balkus. I am an animal program apprentice at the Brandywine Zoo. You guys want to guess what kind of skull this is?
A dinosaur.
A dinosaur? You think it's a dinosaur? No?
Yeah, I think it's a dinosaur.
So the programs that we do, this is what we call it, is the traveling zoo. This is what we offer to schools, anyone who potentially wants us to bring an animal or present a program. We have multiple programs that we like to teach about. From the 5 senses to younger audiences to conservation efforts for maybe older groups. We even have an anti-bullying program, and we bring some of our friends who might have a bad reputation about them, but we try to teach that they are not as bad as everyone tries to make them think they are. Well, today I'm going to be reading a story for you. Do you guys want to hear a story? Yeah. This story is one of my favorite stories. It's all about winter animals. So we read a story all about winter animals, and so we try to bring along some of our cuddly friends for people to meet to learn about how they survive in the winter and what they may like or not like whenever winter comes along. So this first lady, she's very pretty, but she's also very sleepy. Who thinks this is a hedgehog? Well, guess what, guys? This isn't a hedgehog. So these guys are very special. They are called tenrics. Education is one of the easiest ways to get a message out, even through something as fun as meeting an animal. People don't realize that you can teach something as simple as the 5 senses through something as fun as meeting an animal, because they don't know that we have a lot in common. Everybody smells, touches, feels. Same with this guy, he just happens to use it with his tongue. So we met an animal that likes to sleep through the winter. How about we meet an animal who likes to play through the winter? Yeah? You've probably been very curious about this guy right here. So I am going to bring him out. Raise your hand if you think it's a hamster. Raise your hand if you think it's a guinea pig. This lovely lady here, her name is Molly. I like to call her Miss Molly. And she is a chinchilla. Can you say that with me? Chinchilla. Very good. Oh, I've always loved working with animals, even as a young kid. And so I did not originally think that I wanted to get into education, but I started teaching at all my internships and I just fell in love with it. And so I'm glad that I found the Brandywine Zoo, because they developed the experience that I needed to get more involved working with animals and hopefully working more in education. Since he has no fur, do you think he likes the winter? No. I'm gonna head on back and we're gonna meet Reggie. So you can find us online at our website at brandywinezoo.org. We have our education department where we put on a lot of programs. The whole list of them are online. If you do come and visit our zoo, we do have brochures and everything on display for you to read about if you are interested in going in depth after you take your visit at the zoo.
How wonderful is that? The way they discussed relevant themes, paired with some animal friends and touchable artifacts from the story, was amazing. The smiles on the children's faces were proof positive how learning can be fun. And a special thanks to Eliza, our guest reporter for the good stuff. You'll be introduced to more student reporters in future episodes. However, next up, we had the great opportunity to sit down with Dr. Tawanda Bond, who talked about her newly created position as Red Clay's first equity officer. I hope you'll enjoy it as much as we did putting it together. Enjoy.
The Red Clay Consolidated School District, in an effort to boost diversity and close the opportunity gap in its classrooms, created a chief position to oversee a new district division focused on equity, diversity, and inclusion. Dr. Tawanda Bond is the perfect choice to lead this effort. Her role, among many other aspects, will be to emphasize diverse and equitable staffing, along with high-quality, equitable educational opportunities for all students. She was a teacher, an assistant principal, a principal, and her new position is an exciting one as she shares with us a little bit more about who she is and what she looks forward to in her new role with Red Clay.
Hi and welcome. I'm very pleased to welcome Dr. Tawanda Bond. She is the Red Clay Equity Officer, the first district, I'll brag a little, we're the first district in the state to appoint someone as an equity officer. I think it's apt that we're talking about this in February, which is, as we all know, Black History Month. But before we get into the work that you're doing, Dr. Bond, for the equity plan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you bring personally to this job, to this role, and perhaps a little bit about your experiences and your thoughts and how that's going to, color your work, for lack of a better word, on how you're going to do this job.
Absolutely. So first of all, thanks for having me. I think it's very fitting with this being Black History Month that I am here having this interview. So a little bit about myself. I grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the oldest of four, in a community that was high poverty, and in the late 70s, high crime. Mm-hmm. In my environment and in my world, I was not exposed to anything but people that looked like me, brown and black people. Mm-hmm. So in my community, we had our neighborhood school. Mm-hmm. We went to school, everyone at school looked like me. The only people that didn't look like me were the teachers that worked with me in my school. But even growing up back then, I had teachers that I knew cared about me. Back then the teachers would come out to our school, they would come out to our homes, they would walk us home. And as I grew, my mother knew that I needed the opportunity to be exposed to other people from other backgrounds and other cultures that were different than myself, because my view was my world.
Right.
What I saw, my exposure was my world. it wasn't until I was in 7th grade that my mother sent me off across town, and in Philadelphia it seemed like it was miles and miles away, across
Right.
town to go to a performing arts school because I play violin. And when I went to that school, that was the first time I encountered Caucasian people in person, besides my teachers.
Right.
I had never had, any friends that looked different than me. I had never been to any houses that looked different than mine. I had never been exposed to any foods that were different from the foods that I consumed in my neighborhood and in my home. So it was a real shell shock,
Sure.
to go into
Sure.
this community where I was one of 4 in a school.
So
that
all
was
the children, all the kids in your family went to this.
only 4 students from my neighborhood went to the
Oh.
school across town, and the school was all Italian American, predominantly
Wow.
Italian American. It was in South Philadelphia. So, education was always important for me because I knew that education was my way to make my life better.
Sure.
Also, it was a way to make life better for my brothers and sisters because at the time when I was younger, I was almost a primary caregiver for my younger siblings because my mother was a single mother. So that experience really shaped the way I valued education because I looked at education as my way out of that type of situation. It was my family's way out of that situation.
And you knew at that age
I knew at
that
that
you
age.
had the smarts, you had the drive.
Absolutely, and they had drive also, but the opportunity. I had the opportunity
Okay.
that my mother presented for me to go across town because I played violin.
Okay.
So I had the opportunity. After I finished high school, I graduated, went to Temple University, which is also an urban college. So
Right.
at Temple, I was exposed to even more people from different backgrounds, different cultures, different ethnicities. So it really opened my eyes and gave me a different worldview, a global view, which is what I didn't have before. So I think that path along the way and those exposures and being able to exist in a place that was very homogeneous and then go to a place that was heterogeneous where I was exposed to different things really gave me a good eye and a good feel for working with, being surrounded by, and really being knowledgeable about other people that are different than myself.
Right. Right. And do you believe that you have to be in an environment that has all those different people, or can we create a curriculum and a system that enlightens our young people to that it's a diverse world and there's lots of different cultures and types of people?
I think exposure is the key.
Okay.
Exposure is key. Exposure is key to how you frame your context.
Okay.
For me, coming to Delaware as a teacher, I served as I'm going to say served, I didn't serve. I was a 9th grade special education teacher. And I can remember being a teacher and having some of the toughest kids, but some of the most lovable kids, kids that really needed the extra attention to move forward. From there, I went on to be an assistant principal. So I served in, my first school was a rural school. My second school that I served as an assistant principal was a suburban school. And then I went on to be a principal at an urban school.
Right.
So I've had
You've
the
had them
range-
all, yeah.
Yes, I've had
That's
the
great.
range of educational experiences on top of the personal experiences that I had
Okay.
growing up. So, I think it gives me a very broad a very broad lens, and it contributes to the work that I do in my role as equity officer. Because studying throughout my years, through my degrees, I studied education, but I also had a very specific concentration in things like ethnic studies.
Okay.
Equity. I did a lot of case studies on different states in the country that were looking at equity early on. So those things did, I think do help me frame the work that I do in my current position.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about that work. Tell us a little bit about how Red Clay came to decide that it was important to create this job, and what you've been tasked with in your role as the equity officer.
Absolutely. So Red Clay has had a long-standing philosophy on equity and diversity, as evidenced by policies that have been in place for 10, 15 years in our district. Last year, the district did an equity survey and a diversity survey that was completed by all of our stakeholders, our parents, our staff members, and our community. And out of that survey, that research-based survey, there were 8 recommendations. And the 8 recommendations all came around things like inclusiveness, student-centered learning, professional development, making sure we have culturally competent staff just across the board. And also one of those recommendations was to have someone to lead the work.
Right.
So out of the survey with the recommendations, part of the recommendations was the creation of my position. So in my role this year, one of the heavy lifts is the creation of the district's equity plan. Mm-hmm. And I'm very fortunate to have over 40 people on the district equity committee. And all of those people have valuable input. We have people from all walks of life, mm-hmm. all backgrounds. We have community members, we have parents, we have staff members from Red Clay, and they all give input on research-based practices that can apply to those 8 recommendations that came out of last year's survey.
Okay. And serving, I happen to serve mm-hmm. on the diversity committee, and I know that every month that we meet, you really do a great job. There's great topics. There's, as you call them, difficult conversations that we're having. Courageous, excuse me. That's better. Yes. Because they are courageous conversations. Absolutely. And they are, moments of enlightenment. I've seen it, members of the committee, like, I hadn't thought mm-hmm. about why we need to do this or what's important.
Absolutely.
And, is that going on in our district, do you think?
Absolutely. And, even with the creation of the committee and the task that we've been given to create the district policy, many of our schools have things underway already. Mm-hmm. Another piece of my job is I oversee 21st Century Learning Grants, and those grants provide supplemental resources for our schools that are high poverty schools. Mm-hmm. It gives our students after-school activities and summer activities that are productive and also academically enriching. 3 of our schools are Lewis Dual Language, Richardson Park Elementary, mm-hmm. as well as Warner Elementary. Okay. And we have over 150 students that participate in that programming. And with that, serving our high poverty schools, which are predominantly minority, we are seeing the needle move on their achievement when it comes to things like their literacy scores and things like that.
Oh, that's great.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
That brings to mind 2 questions. The first one I'll ask is, understandably, one of your most important jobs is to first look at the curriculum and look what we're teaching our children, and that's the business we're in. But I understand your role also includes, the recruitment of a more diverse staff, and the resources, the resource allocation, and is that equitable and fair? Can you talk a little bit about what other things you're doing
Sure.
besides the curriculum piece?
Yep. So I can speak to the work that I am helping to facilitate with the different departments, such as human resources. So one thing that we are looking at is, how do we go about recruiting and retaining more staff from different diverse backgrounds, whether it be racial backgrounds, whether it be identity, whether it be gender. So those are things that we find are important because we feel as though, and research says, that students do better in situations that reflect where they can see themselves. Okay. So we've done a myriad of minority focused job fairs. So we're participating in this year things like the Minority Job Fair in University of Pennsylvania that's coming up in April. And then also taking a look at, going back to curriculum, we also are working with curriculum and instruction, looking at how we can build in culturally competent pieces for our students, because the conversations need to start younger and younger and younger, so that our students really can understand themselves as well as each other. So we look a lot at the social construct of identity with our students.
And that leads into a question about research, which you just kind of mentioned. What does the research say about either, the effect on children when they learn about their own culture, or when they are being taught by someone that looks like themselves?
Well, the research says that is one of the things that can increase achievement. It's like the mirrors and windows, so students do well when they see mirrors, when they see things that reflect themselves. Students also do well when they see windows, because it's not just about understanding yourself, but it's also about understanding others. But you can't understand others until you understand yourself, and that can be from a gender identity, that can be from a ethnicity, that can be from a socioeconomic identity. But that all is captured when you have staff and faculty that is a reflection of your student population.
Okay, and the next question is about training our staff. I mean, how important is it, and maybe where are we, and where are we going with training our staff to be more culturally aware?
Sure. So that was actually one of the recommendations that came out of committee from last year, and that is one of the things that we are working on in committee. Thus far, we've actually had over 61 district administrators and school administrators participate in equitable with excellence school and district training, professional developments. And those things range from culturally competent pedagogy to culturally...
What does culturally competent pedagogy mean? Because I don't know what that means. Maybe someone else watching won't know what that means.
So culturally competent pedagogy is really the delivery of instruction.
Okay.
So, making sure that when you are tasked with presenting information from curriculum, the curriculum is presented in a way with texts that are at the correct complexity level for students.
Okay.
But texts that students can see themselves in, or text that students can see others in.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily have to be written by someone that the student identifies with, but it gives them exposure to different cultures. And also the cultural piece is appropriate. So when we say culturally competent, that means that when the teachers are teaching the pedagogy is appropriate for the culture that they are.
A cause for optimism that your job exists, that we're going this way as a culture, as a community, as a district, that we're recognizing the importance of this. Tell us a little bit about where you hope to be this year. You talked a little bit about the equity plan and maybe what we do with that plan.
Sure. So our goal for this year really is, and we will have it done by the end of this year, really is to create a common language for our district. When we talk about diversity, what does diversity mean? What is our definition of diversity? What is our definition of equity? Because to have the conversations about diversity and equity, we have to have the conversations about inequities also. So we need to have a common language when we are sharing that message across our district. We also need to know as a district what it is that we believe in when it comes to diversity and equity. We have our core values as it applies to our district strategic plan. But in our core values with our district strategic plan, what do we believe with a lens on diversity and equity?
Okay.
So that is really what we look to accomplish by the end of this year, because we need to get everybody on the same bus.
Yes, a starting point. We have to have a starting point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because everybody's moving in the right direction. Everybody understands that there's needs for these types of things. But just to get on the same bus, to have the conversation in the same language.
And what kind of response are you getting from the staff in Red Clay? Are they embracing that we're doing this work?
Absolutely. Our staff and our community has been embracing the work that we do. Like I said, the diversity committee has active participation.
Yes, I know that.
And the folks that come to those meetings come with research-based best practices to share. We have a lot of conversation, and we've really hit the ground running. Even our district supervisors, everybody's on board, our district admin, and they all believe in the work that we're doing in this realm. Because really it's about eliminating the predictability of student achievement, because all of it really funnels down to that.
It does, and we as a district, our strategic plan, our meetings, our things, we so frequently talk about how can we close these achievement gaps. It's a nationwide problem, it's a nationwide discussion, but it's clearly a critical one for the future of our country. And not to overemphasize it, but it's true. Tell us a little bit to finish up here, your thoughts about moving forward, and if you have anything else that you'd like to add.
Sure. Moving forward, I believe that the work is being done, so we're connecting the dots. The pieces are there. It's bringing it all together to make a full picture. As we roll out all of our diversity and equity initiatives, we have made it a focus. We are looking to have diversity champions in each school, so our boots on the ground to ensure that all of our efforts with diversity and equity are systemic and also embedded into not just our district level climate and culture, but our climate and culture as a district as a whole, at every school, in every hallway, in every classroom. I'm a firm believer in you have to really change how you look at things if you want things that you look at to start to change.
Sure. Well, you have a big, important job here in Red Clay, and I hope that once the plan is completed, you'll come back and tell us about the plan and your work to move forward.
Sure.
It's fascinating work.
Absolutely.
It really is. And thanks so much for sitting down with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it, Dr. Bond. Thank
you.
you.
So much.
Thank you, Dr. Bond. We are so excited to see what you have in store for all of us here in the Red Clay family. And thank you, Patty Nash, for that amazing interview. Next up on The Good Stuff, we visit Heritage Elementary School, where they have a unique and musical take on learning fractions. Check it out.
I've been participating in the string quartet since I started playing with the symphony, probably back in like 2010. We started doing just the quartet show. Lisa Vopel at the time was also helping to organize some educational programming, and this was a program that she had done with another group, and so she thought it would be a good fit with the symphony. And we started finding schools that were interested, and it, what's special about it is that it combines like a core curriculum subject, math, with music. So we're sort of going about it, trying to find a different opening for kids to learn about math by approaching it through a musical perspective.
This is the beginning of the Fractions in Music residency, which Ms. Conlon mentioned. So I'll be in your classrooms just by myself for 4 visits following this concert. So everything we do today, we're going to do more of, but kind of in even more fun ways with you all in your classrooms.
I know that fractions and math sometimes is a little challenging for certain students, and music is one of those disciplines that uses math a lot, just rhythms and how music gets played and tempo and dividing beats up, and so it's like a pretty easy way to access fractions.
So we're going to count these like this. So remember when Sue was playing her whole notes, we went hold that, hold note. Let's try that. Hold that, hold note. Excellent. And then when we do half notes, we're going to do half note. Hold that.
Honestly, when we go into an elementary school, we really just want to support the school and support the teachers here. And I know if they're challenged with certain ways to approach certain subjects and having trouble, I know every kid learns differently, but if there's a handful of students that sort of grasp the concepts this way, then and that helps the school and the teachers reach those students, we just really want to help. But we also just want to expose the students to the fact that there's a professional orchestra in the state of Delaware, that I just don't know that everyone is aware that we exist, the symphony exists, and we perform excellent concerts in Wilmington and downstate as well. We perform in Lewis and in Dover and all over the place, and we just want to sort of tap into the communities around.
So the presentation in the cafeteria laid the foundations for the connection between music and fractions, how math and music are related. It involved the students in creating the beats and knowing that a whole note can be divided into two, and the 4 and the 8 and the teeny 16ths. So then what they've done over the last 4 weeks with their in-house residency program they've done is that they've built music and wrote the music themselves, knowing that each measure had to equal a whole note. So then they learned that either they had to have 4 quarter notes, 2 half notes, etc. So they took the foundation from the cafeteria presentation, and then they each broke into teams and applied it.
Going to do our final performances today of your fractions compositions, and we're going to be using percussion instruments like we practiced on, and then after that we're going to do a play about Anansi the spider, who's an African folktale character who's quite mischievous and likes to play pranks on people. 2 8 quarter, speedy 16, 2 8. That was excellent. Now it was louder and it was very rhythmic, right? That's how you have to do it. So let's keep going. Let's do the next line and let's count it and play it that way.
As much as we can, we need to apply the standards we're learning to something real life, to make that connection. If for anything, it just gives them some background knowledge. All of these kids listen to music. They know music. They memorize music. We have a great percentage of our kids involved in band and strings, so they're always doing the fractions. So I think anytime that a math lesson, a reading lesson, any of our content can be directly related to something else they're doing in their life, it just makes it more meaningful. It brings more purpose to it.
We're gonna do this play about Anansi the spider. So, first of all, let's practice doing quarter. Let's do it all together. I need somebody who's gonna be spider.
We know the kids have gone home because parents have come back and said, you know, that was a really neat program. Thank you for bringing it in. The kids had a lot to say about it. And so it's the message is getting home, which is a good thing.
And that is the end of our story.
That piece was music to my ears and my eyes. Who knew that learning fractions could be so much fun? Well, that's all we have for this episode of The Good Stuff. We sure hope you enjoyed watching it as much as we did putting it together for you. We are always on the lookout for fun and smile-worthy stories to bring to you. But if you have an idea for one of our next features, please feel free to reach out to us on the email below, or you can always hit us up on social media. We'd love to hear from you. One more thing. On The Good Stuff, we always try to leave you with something to think about and something positive. So remember this: never let your doubt blind your goals. For your future lies in your ability, not your failure. Be great, Red Clay.